Hello, this is Andy Ainsworth from Seattle Christian Counseling, coming to you again with a second part of three brief discussions on how fear impacts our relationships, our marriages, and what faith has to say about our fear. As I said in our first video, discussing fear, freedom from fear, and by faith, that as one man said, that faith is the child of fear. And certainly we find out where we're at when the pressure's on and we have concerns in our life and fears creep in, pressures creep in. We find out where our faith is. And so I want to present to you a second idea, and I hope you'll go back to the first idea where we took a look at how fear is oftentimes demonstrated through nagging and manipulative tactics, demanding tactics, control, and what God has to say about that, and some choices that we have. The second idea I want to present is how we go about sharing what we need in our marriages, in our close relationships. Again, rather than demanding, do we have the skill and the counseling that may be necessary that will teach us to address our fears in a non-demanding, non-critical way, or do we take to have our relationship needs met? Do we emotionally selfishly take to have our needs met and to receive the care that we believe we need and even deserve? Fear will move into us really believing that we deserve and have it owed to us that our needs are to be met. So this second tendency, what I see and what we've experienced is that oftentimes fear is demonstrated in three ways of expression. We see three types. There's hurlers and hurlers, there's hurlers and hiders, and there's hiders and hiders. The hurlers and hurlers, as you could guess and have already guessed, are two people that are very vocal, verbal. They fight and quarrel. And again, fighting and quarreling, what does that get you? James 4 is really clear about what fighting and quarreling is. Fighting and quarreling is because we want what we want. He says more specifically, he asks the question, why do we fight and quarrel among us? And James says, isn't it because of our selfish desires that rage inside of us? We'll hurt each other real bad because we want what we want. We emotionally take an attempt to take from one another because we really are hurting, and we're very afraid that our needs aren't going to be met. So we will fight and quarrel to make sure that happens. A very selfish thing to do. For hurlers and hurlers, it can get pretty loud and ugly. But there's hope, there's faith. At least we know that two people can be really honest. They just need to learn how to discuss their honesty well, and in peace and in wisdom and with compassionate care. Then there's a second type that I just briefly addressed, and that's the hiders and the hurlers. There's one that's loud and the other one disappears. Which one are you? Are you a hider in your relationship? Are you a hurler in your relationship? Inevitably, the hider will hurl. Two people can't play that game or live in that cycle very long. And so it's just a matter of time. Of course, there's an exception in the event that there's abuse and there's so much fear that the hider doesn't dare speak up. But in in a relationship where two people are loving each other and they just don't know how to address their fear, maybe their families of origins are kind of creeping in, and a husband has learned how to hide and disappear during conflicted times when there's concern and tension, and maybe the wife is so afraid of being alone that she's more vocal. And that just may be one scenario. So how about you? Are you hurlers and hurlers? Are you a hider and a hurler? How about the third type that may happen? and that is the two hiders. And we believe that in getting the mentoring, receiving the mentoring, I should say, from David Ferguson, our mentors down in Cedar Park, two hiders, a hider and a hider, so afraid of conflict, so afraid for a lot of different reasons. Again, family of origin stuff can kind of creep in. Two people just kind of disappear on one another and experience a deep aloneness in that hiding, and so they're really not known. And many people go through years of not being known, and they're called introverts, or they're just peacekeepers, or just like to be quiet, and they're just kind of like to keep to themselves. There's all kinds of ways to rationalize to a married husband and wife that are two people are very close, that each one hides. And we believe that is the most lethal type. In fact, John Gottman up in Seattle has done some research that when two people are hurlers, or two people fight and quarrel, and that's kind of their style for addressing their fear and not sure that their needs are going to be met, they oftentimes have the most potential of having the healthiest, most honest, and even in caring relationships when they've learned to use their particular temperaments well. And the most lethal are those who hide, in relationships that hide. So where are you at? What's your tendency? Sir, are you a hider? When things get kind of tough and there's a conflict, you just remember what dad and mom used to do when there was that tension and you start walking on eggshells, and you had to go learn to hide from how loud it was, and it just kind of scared you, and you can get triggered and you can disappear on your wife. Ma'am, are you a hider? Do you remember where you came from? And did you learn to hide well in your own way? Are you a hurler? Ma'am, are you a hurler because you're so afraid of your needs not being met, and so you're going to demand that they are, and you're going to selfishly take through argument or fighting and quarreling? And sir, are you a quarreler? And do you get bigger because you're feeling so small in the relationship and afraid that you're not going to be respected and cared for either, so you have to get bigger to make sure your needs are being met? That's a very painful way to live. So I hope these three areas make sense. I hope you'll maybe make an honest evaluation of what your tendencies are. They have a few examples. Oftentimes people get into their behaviors because they truly don't believe they're going to be cared for. So what if we took a look at a couple of ideas, like learning to speak the truth in love and through a guided process, and trusting the Lord is showing you that He's going to give you the wisdom and the discernment to speak the truth in love over a cup of coffee, over a breakfast, and really care for one another and give one another the attention that you need, and able to articulate and able to listen about what you need respectively. How about the need for support when you might be feeling so alone and working hard in your respective areas, and you're feeling so alone and not really getting the support you need, so you're kind of demanding that there is support, and it comes out destructively. What if we had that coffee time and that breakfast time and really shared the need for support in a kind, gentle way, and actually defined what the support looks like to you and feels like to you? And again, without demanding, without harshness, but a gentle speaking, as God's word says in Ephesians 4:15, as we referred to in our last video, that we speak the truth in love to one another, rather than taking from one another. So I hope these three areas are made sense to you, and taking a look at your tendencies when you're feeling afraid. And we hope that the Lord touches your heart with a faith, a biblical faith and an experiential faith, to come together and reason with one another with tenderness and compassionate care. So I hope you find this has a little bit of an impact on your life, and I hope you'll kind of take a look in the mirror and see what your tendencies are and how the Lord wants to give you the compassionate care directly and through one another. God bless you.